Hello there. Yes, we are Geeks Assembled, and we have assembled here once again. And it's movie night, yes. And there's just a small group of us here today to talk about Apocalypse Now. Yes. And let's kick off with Susan. Go ahead, Susan.
Hello. I watched this movie for film school back in the early 90s or late 80s, and I was completely blown out of the water, so to speak, by this movie. It was intense. It was all about Vietnam, and Vietnam was something that the other movie that was interesting about this was Platoon. But Apocalypse Now was devastating. It had a long, drawn-out build-up, and then when they finally reached the Colonel, it was awful. I mean, he imprisoned the guy and he beat him up and stuff. And anyway, so interesting. So much wild, misty, smoky, hazy photography, such deep, interesting dialogue. It was very violent, very intense in terms of violence. And it was of an age, it was, it looked like it could have been documentary, but from Vietnam, but it also looked like it could have been something from, it looked like it could have been something out of, a horror movie more. It had stellar cast. Everyone from Martin Estevez Sheen to the very brilliant oh God, his name I just blanked his name.
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando. Crikey, sorry. Oops. Oh wow. Anyway, yeah, it was an intense movie. I rewatched it, and I gotta tell you, the midsection where they're going through the water, that was like, it was pretty incredible. Anyway, I think pretty much gonna have to give it I'll give it an 8.5 because it was so good. But it was, it's kind of not, well, I mean, I used to play it at Vietnam when I was a kid, so I don't know. Yeah, I'll give it an 8.5.
An 8.5. Thank you, Susan. Now let's zoom on over to Connor. Go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, this is my first time watching it, and war films are one of my favourite genres, and surprisingly I hadn't seen this one before, but this one's one of the best of the lot because it really truly is a brutal film. From start to finish, it's brutality to its very core, because you see in all these vivid images of like when Robert Duvall's character's throwing the cards on all the dead bodies, when the Martin Sheen and the crew reach the sort of the checkpoint for the escort to the river where Marlon Brando's character is. You see all these like dead children, and they really don't hold back on the brutality. I think one of the best parts of the film is the cinematography, because you're going from a very 80s Blade Runner-y light setting where it's full of all these really bright, colourful lights, to a sort of mucky setting where I think, particularly when Kurtz has Martin Sheen's character in captivity, it's sort of, there's like this brown sort of look to the image, so it's really mucky looking and really imperfect, which sort of adds to the war setting. The cast is, as Susan said, is out of this world. I don't think you'll be able to get cast quite as good for a film these days. Marlon Brando, of course, is Walter Kurtz was one of the best bits, because he's such a... Marlon Brando was such a great actor. I mean, he caused absolute chaos behind the scenes on this film as well. I mean, if you read anything about Marlon Brando, you'll know just how difficult he was to work with. But as always, he gives an absolute mesmerising performance. Obviously, Martin Sheen in his sort of prime. Then you had a really, really, really young Lawrence Fishburne, which I bet no one would have been able to recognise without any prior knowledge to that, as Clean. And you have, as I said, Robert Duvall, and also a post-Star Wars, Harrison Ford, who is my all-time favourite actor and who I absolutely love in this film. He's a really minor role, but he's great as a... I don't know what rank in the army is. I think is he a general or something?
Colonel Lucas.
Yeah, Colonel Lucas, which is a reference, I believe, a purposeful reference to George Lucas, which Francis Ford Coppola included. Yes, it's just full of these great actors that are really, looking back, are top tier. These are all like A-list stars, and it just all of them work so well together. It's just unbelievable casting. I think, as I said, it's really brutal, and on Blu-ray, which is how I watched it, the film looks superb. Like the explosions, they're all a really vivid red, it's as if you're watching it in real life. It's just brilliant cinematography, brilliant sound work as well. There's some really violent bits, like one of my favourite bits is where the woman in that village square sort of place runs up to the helicopter and just throws the conical hat inside the helicopter, and all of a sudden the helicopter just bursts into flames because it's been blown up, because it has a grenade concealed inside of it. And then, of course, how the characters react to that. You're now going to get that dirty bitch or whatever one of them said. You know, it's just such a brilliant script as well. I think overall I'll have to give this film a 9 out of 10.
A 9 out of 10. Thank you, Connor. And we had Craig for a minute then, but he's on holiday. He's got a bit of internet trouble, so hopefully he can come back in. If not, I'm sure he will leave his review at the end of this podcast. Anyway, let's go over to Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
Well, before I start my review, I'd like to hear Alan's review before I start mine.
For who?
Alan's review. What did you think of the film?
Of what film?
Apocalypse Now.
Oh, well, I'm not big into X-Men. No, I didn't. I couldn't watch it. Sadly,
on that note,
Lee sent me wouldn't work, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get hold of it. And I want to put this straight. I screenshotted what I was doing as Lee was telling me what to do, and I was screenshotting what I was doing, and it wouldn't work. Lee knows it wouldn't work, but still, he's having a go at me. Yeah. So let's go back to Lee and see what he thinks about the film. Now he's going to behave himself, aren't you, Lee?
Edit that out. Right. Apocalypse Now is regarded as one of the best or greatest films ever made. It's won loads of awards. I think it won an Oscar for the cinematography, and I think Robert Duvall got an award for his portrayal of the Colonel Kilgore. But for me, it starts off on a really good footing for me, because you have the rotor blade sounds, you have the Doors song, the end, at the beginning of the film, this is the end, my beautiful friend, the end. But because it's as Susan said, it's about Vietnam, but it's more of a story of just that gang of fellas on the boat, travelling down that river, and who they meet down that river to get to their end for their mission to assassinate Colonel Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando. It's brilliantly shot. The effects are brilliant. It is a very long film. I rewatched it on the Redux version, which is nearly 3 hours long. There's a lot of bits added back into that. Could have been taken out, but Brando as Colonel Kurtz, awesome portrayal. He's only in the film for 20 minutes at the most, and it's at the end of the film, and it's all shot in the shadows and in darkness. So really, you don't really see Brando on the full screen. He's having with his hands over his eyes, talking away. But it's beautifully shot that way. It's of its time. It was going through the Vietnam War, and I think they got the feel of it. Martin Sheen, awesome. He was it Captain Willard? He was verge of a nervous breakdown at the beginning of the movie. Then he was given this mission to go and assassinate this insane colonel with all these followers. Well, as you say, Robert Duvall, Colonel Kilgore. That is one hell of a portrayal. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Wow, what a quote! And the other one, have you surf or you fight? And all he's bothered about is finding the right waves for surfing for his soldiers instead of fighting. It's brilliant. And when Willard pinches one of the surfboards, they're just following him down the jungle with that recording. Please hand back the surfboard. We won't harm you. And this is in the middle of a war. All he's bothered about is his surfboard. But it's a brilliant film. As you say, Lawrence Fishburne, very young Lawrence Fishburne. And also, nobody's mentioned Dennis Hopper turns up at the end as well. Another brilliant actor as a photojournalist. But all in all, brilliant. Brando, for me, it's just he steals the screen, even if you can hardly see him. It is, as I said, it's graphic. I mean, especially the shall we say, the sacrificial cow scene. That is very graphic and real, where they're just cutting the cow to bits, and it was a real cow. And then also the scene where they're walking up to Brando's lair, all the heads, all the decapitated heads just scattered all over these. It's an awesome film. It does take a lot to watch it, but I do recommend you've got to watch this film once in your life, because it's about war. It shows you the horrors of war, and to quote Brando's last breath in the film, the horror. It's just awesome. I'm giving it a 10. I just love this film.
A 10, thank you, Lee. Now, because I wasn't able to watch the film, I'm going to open the floor to whoever wants to speak.
I did forget to mention Dennis Hopper, actually. I thought his character was a sort of hippie photojournalist. It was an exceptional performance. And also, Francis Ford Coppola actually appeared in the film as a TV reporter. which is actually a scene that quite irritated me, because you go from a very real sort of war setting, and suddenly you see this cameraman on the side with all the soldiers trying to make their way through the village, which is getting absolutely bombarded by Duval's men, and you just sort of see this guy saying, don't the camera. And it's as if you're watching him directing the film. It just sort of took me out of the film a bit. That's probably one of the only complaints actually I'd have about that particular scene. It's just it just felt a bit. It just took you out of the story a bit. But as Lee said, it does take a lot to watch it. It's really quite slow paced, and for a war film that's unusual. But it's at the same time it forces you to recognise how brutal and how sickening and how disgusting war is, and it really does have a sort of an impact on you as the viewer, because it's that slow. But it's a great film to watch, and I think Marlon Brando requested to be filmed from the waist up because he wanted to look like a 6'6" giant sort of person, because he wanted to be this sort of overbearing, really terrifying sort of vile man. You know, this colonel that just would absolutely destroy and own the screen, and that's exactly what he did. So I think Marlon Brando just absolutely owned this film for the 20 minutes he was in it. It took 3 years to film, I think, which is because it encountered a ridiculous amount of problems. Most of it being because Francis Ford Coppola and Marlon Brando couldn't see eye to eye for ages. I think Marlon Brando had one idea for Kurtz, and Coppola had another, and it just took as I said, you know, Marlon Brando used to cause a load of issues behind the scenes because he was that sort of hard to work with. But for 3 years it just comes out as a masterpiece. So yeah, it really is. It's imperfect, but at the same time it's perfect. You know, it's great.
I mean, one of the iconic scenes in the film is the raid on the village in the helicopters to the tune of Rad of the Valkyrie, where they blasted it out on speakers on the helicopter. I mean, it's just that scene there it's just every scene in it really is awesome. It's, you know, as I said, as Connor's mentioned, the explosions are can vex you. It's just awesomely shot, awesomely acted, well written, well directed. As I said, I can't fault this film. You can understand why it regarded one of the best ever made.
Anyone else have anything to add? Susan? You're muted, Susan.
Right. Sorry. The agreement that I have with Connor and Lee about this film is amazing. What my fellow panelists said is pretty much right on. The score was great. The score had the music of the past 500 years to show that the brutality of the past 500 years was, you know, came to an apex in this movie and in this story and in that war. And there's there is a fear that you get when you see all these kids swayed under the tutelage of the colonel. That really made me afraid. It was the brutality towards women, was intense. But then there was like the honoring of women too. I mean, there was the Miss December, who had to basically go to war herself, and she did what she could, and so those sorts of things were really remarkable about it. The Dennis Hopper character trying to woo the affections of all the people on the boat to the Colonel, that was really eerie, and that the end of it was just so horrible. You know, I just go through that ending, and I just, you know, it takes me places, dark places, you know. So yeah, definitely the horror, right? And you know, really, we all are just like, you know, delivery people for grocery stores or whatever that line was. You know, we're not really in charge of our destiny, especially in a situation like that. We're kind of powerless people, but we have a fight in us. So, yeah, I'm about ready to cry. I was trying not to. It's intense.
I mean, it is. I mean, as you say, it's a tale of those guys traveling down there on that boat, that small boat together, and through the film, you get to know this group of guys, and once one of them loses their life, you feel it. You do feel it. You got to know these. Yeah, you got to know these guys, and one by one, they lose their lives. I mean, there's only 2 of them alive at the end of the film.
Lee, are you trying to make Susan cry?
No. I'm just saying it hits hard. It hits hard, and it's done its job right if it's doing that. If a film can do that, so just one person, it's done its job right. It's done its job well, and it does hit home. The horrors of war, and you feel for those characters by the end of the film.
Yeah, totally.
And say that some of them don't have a gruesome ending, especially Chef. You don't see that coming, but that just shows you how insane Brando is, the character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is just, I don't know. Alid, I've got to say, when you do get a chance, watch this film. Mm. Okay, it may not be your sort of film, but watch it.
You might need tissues, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I do. I sure do.
Susan with a big heart.
It proves he got a heart, Susan. You know, you feel for the character.
Really tough movie. It was like I was on when I first saw it in uni. I was so medicated, self-medicated, that it was like it didn't impact me. Now it's like taking a shot to the chest. Anyway, that's the. I guess I must stop talking at this point.
Does anyone else have anything else to add about this film? No? So that's it. I'd like to thank everybody here for joining me. I'd like to thank you for watching. Do tell us what you think about this film. Also, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And as ever, we'll see you next time.